Oxford Animal Sanctuary. So he became very involved, and at that time there were some people who became very famous philosophers in Oxford thinking about animals. Ros Godlovich and John Harris. And Richard Ryder was also involved. He was a clinical psychologist, but he created the term speciesism. I've forgotten the name of his book. What was Richard Ryder's book called?
I know his latest one. I can't remember his other one.
His first one.
Oh, is it something Revolution? Animal Revolution?
No, I think it's even before that. Anyway. So he met all these influential people in the animal rights movement. He was much younger than them, obviously. They were like postgrads, and I guess he was about 16 or 17. And then he applied to do theology, and he applied to the University of Lancaster and King's College London, and he didn't think he would get into King's because it was considered a good university, and he didn't feel he had the right background or qualifications. But he was interviewed by Sidney Evans, who was the Dean of King's, and he was offered a place. And so that's where he went to train for the priesthood. But all the time there was the animal stuff going on in the background, and that was when he first became involved in the National Council for the RSPCA and was their youngest council member. I think he probably had to be 18 to be that on that council. So he did that throughout his time at university, and carried on after that.
Yes, he's got a question.
Let's define RSPCA.
Oh, right. Yeah. The RSPCA stands for the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals.
Say that one more time.
The RSPCA stands for the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. It was started by Arthur Broome, who was actually a priest in Victorian times, who saw the cruelty to animals on the streets. You know, remember at that time you would have used horses, for instance, on the streets, and they were badly treated. And he set up this animal protection, and Queen Victoria became its first patron, which is why it is called Royal Society, because she endowed that name on it. And it was the leading animal charity in England, and has spawned various other, what we call SPCAs around the world, including America, Australia, around the Commonwealth mostly. And it has a national council which decides on policy. And so when Andrew first joined it, they were in favour of hunting with hounds, fox hunting. But he met a guy, another member called John Bryant, who was also opposed to fox hunting, and they formed something called the Reform Group within the council. And eventually, I think it took quite a long time. He would have to tell you the process, but eventually the RSPCA took a vote to become opposed to fox hunting. And that was at a time when you had very prominent members of the royal family fox hunting regularly. So it was quite a difficult, politically quite a difficult move for the RSPCA. And he continued to be on the council. There was a gap. He went off it at one time, and then I think that somebody persuaded him to go on. Probably John Bryant actually probably said, Andrew, you need to do this again. But eventually he couldn't stand the bureaucracy that went with it, and didn't feel that it was doing what he wanted. And he'd be better off spending his time writing.
Can you say something a bit more about that? You know, how Dan isn't good at being in institutions in general, because it's a theme of his life. So.
Yeah. Yes, I think throughout Andrew's life he's always resisted committees and any sort of bureaucracy. He hates that CEOs of large charities are paid vast amounts of money. And he's never been good on committees in the church or anywhere else. Of his generation, he would have probably been one of his generation who would probably have been a bishop. But he was never willing to play the games that lead you to get to being picked as a bishop. And in fact, he would say now that they're mostly managers. And he hates that kind of culture. Is that all right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it applies to Oxford and
Yes.
him starting a centre of his own.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well,
so I can
but-
say that if you like.
Would that be
Do you want me to say, yeah. The post at Mansfield was funded by IFAW initially for 5 years. And then they agreed to extend it for a further 3 years. So he was at Mansfield for 8 years. But during that time there was a change of principal and possibly bursar. I can't remember if the bursar changed, but certainly the principal changed. And they didn't want to renew his fellowship there. And he looked around for other colleges who would home him, as it were. But it's become quite difficult in Oxford because all the colleges have their own ruling bodies who would have to decide. At Blackfriars Hall, which was a Dominican institution, he got to know the regent. The regent there is the head of house, and persuaded him that maybe that he could go there. And so he was called, I think he was called the Bede Jarrett Senior Research Fellow. Bede Jarrett being one of the former regents who cared for animals, I believe. And that continued for 3 years. And then during this time he realised that the money was going to run out. And he had this dream of setting up a centre of it, the centre we have now. And somewhere where he wouldn't be beholden to anybody else's bureaucracy, I suppose. And he could do it as he wanted. Do you want me to say anything about Priscilla?
Not necessarily,
No.
I don't think, really.
You might want to say something about, what it's like to live with a man who, charts his own course and doesn't, play the game and, how's it felt to
He's
be?
pretty inflexible, isn't he?
Yeah. How's it felt to be his wife, given that you were very easygoing, Mama?
How would you describe Andrew then?
Andrew's always been an unusual person. He has very quite... Start again, hang on.
Get your thoughts on. I want to move this over here a bit more.
These tennis balls look good, don't they?
Yeah.
I have to adjust this.
I know, right?
No good for tennis, but...
I mean, it's quite impressive for £17 worth of tennis balls like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mum, you don't have to, it's not a eulogy. I mean, obviously you love him and that can be clear too, but, he isn't the easiest of men, and I think it's alright to say that.
It's important for people to say, things that aren't always promotional about Dad.
Yeah.
I think otherwise it's going to appear, not very genuine. So, we don't need to worry too much, Mum.
Yeah, just say what you think, man. It isn't easy. Well, it's probably honest about it.
Pretty room, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame the stained glass isn't going to make it in there.
Yeah.
too high up.
I know,
Yeah.
it's really cool today.
Yeah.